This is Pat Tormey, and today we're going to be taking a look at how two forms can communicate, and part of a little mini-series I'm calling How Do I Win Forms Form to Form? Now, you may have seen the other part, in another part that I use where I pass the use a property in the pink form to call back and forth and share information, which is a perfectly acceptable technique. Today I'm going to be doing something in a separate technique just to show you an alternate way of doing it, and there'll probably be several other ways as part of this same mini-series, depending entirely on what it is you're trying to do. This case I have two forms. You see I've already decorated them with a couple of things. I'm using blue and pink, mostly because, well, in actual development I don't get to use these colors. So it gives me an opportunity to show off the difference between the two forms. So what we have here is I'm going to have a shared message, and the shared message ideally we pass to my pink form, where the pink form should then be able to change the message and pass it back to the blue form. Now, and keep in mind that I'm going to be using a technique here, passing a parameter, and the parameter I'm going to pass is actually a simple string, but it could be almost anything, and I'd recommend you consider passing a class back and forth, or an instance of a class, so that that object itself will contain more than just what you need. In fact, I've been known to pass in entire record sets and entire data tables. So let's get started. So let's take a look at my pink form. And the first thing I need to do with the pink form is to give it some way to receive a message. So let's go here to the code behind, and you see I have a simple close button there. Now what I want to do here is, let's discuss this for a second. What I want to do is use an overload for the show dialog property, so that when this form opens in a dialog mode, the user will have the option to pass in a specific message. Okay, let's take a look at how I do that. Well, I can say public sub show dialog, and then in this case I'm going to give it an opportunity to pass in a message by ref, and that's the key to how this works. I'm going to pass the message in as a string, and because I'm passing it by ref, and this is important, it means that any changes that happen to that string will change the actual value every place it's been seen. So I'll make a note of that. Okay, now you see the little green squiggly. That's because he's complaining because I am overloading something that already exists, so I need to tell it that I'm going to overload it so that he's not surprised when I do. And overloading is as simple as saying overloads, and that makes the little green squiggly go away. Okay, so now if I overload it, of course I certainly have to still implement it. So what I'm going to do here is say show dialog and not pass any parameters to it, and that'll call the default one, which of course will instantiate the form. So now all I need to do is I need to make sure that that message is actually handled here locally and sent to the text box. Text box message dot text equals the message. Now because that's the value that's being changed by ref, I need to assign it back again when I'm done playing around with it. Now the show dialog is going to stay in dialog mode until it drops through here, but then the content that's changed in that text box needs to be sent back to the message. And that'll do that. Now remember, I'm passing by reference, so I'm going to take the value here, stick it in the text box, and then when the show dialog falls through, I'm going to take the content here and put it back into the message. Now that I have that going on for me, how do I tell form blue about that? Well, form blue, I'm going to click on talk to form pink, and I need to assign the message that I already have in blue's text box. And that's pretty easy to do. I'll just dim up a string, and I'm going to set that equal to text box message.text, and of course this time it's on the blue form. And then when I get to the show dialog here, you'll notice that I have a couple of those overloads. So I have the ability to use the standard show dialog, which I don't choose to use. I have the option to pass in the owner window, but now this is my new one where I'm passing by ref the message. Alright, that takes care of him. Now since I know that message is going to change after it falls through the form dialog open, I have to play the same trick again on this form and say that my text box dot text is going to be equal to my message again. And that's all there is to it. Now, there's a weakness to this technique that I'll bring out, and that's that most of us, no matter how careful we are not going to be paying that much attention to the idea that this is being passed by ref. In fact, you can get a little bit of trouble with your coding in general by switching from by val to by ref and not warning anybody about it. But since it's just us, I'll pass this technique on. I regularly use it and recommend you use it, but with caution. Let's take it for a spin. Alright, I'll put my message in there. Tell it to talk to the pink form. There is my message, I'll say. And just so you see that it's actually changing the underlying value, I'll put a couple of X's in there, and then I'll say close this form. And he falls through and comes back with the answer. Now I'll put a breakpoint on there just so you can see how it actually handles. And here we can just step through. I'll tell it to go one step at a time. There's my message captured. I'll tell it to step into the pink form. There's my overload where a message is being passed in. You know how the rest of this works, so I'll just speed through. Put in a bunch of other stuff. Close the form. Assign the value back. And because it's being handled by ref, when I come back to my blue form, there's my message, and I've completely round-tripped from the blue form to the pink form and back again. This is Pat Tormey, and you've been watching How Do I Win Forms Form to Form using parameters. Thanks.